space that's around him. He's lightning fed by the space that surrounds him. Take it all in. Breathe. Forever be. Forever.
Hey, welcome to Unsung. I'm your host, Blake Quimby. Glad you're here with us today. Before we get started, take a moment and go to these platforms, subscribe and follow us. We'd love to have you along for the journey as we chat with those lifting the limelight in the area in a supporting role. I think it'd be fun to have you come along. Our guest today is a husband. He's a father. He's a musician. He's a pastor, photographer, and I'm saying it right now, for the whole world to know that this is my favorite bodybuilder of all time. I want you to give it up for Mr. Matt Paddack.
Well, that's quite the introduction. By the way, was that some beautiful Blakey in the intro there? Was that you?
It wasn't me. It was the beautiful
It wasn't?
contributors. It was Nolan though.
Oh.
Nolan's in there, so he's playing
nice.
the git fiddle.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thanks for joining us. Man, I know I should know this first question, but you are a Texan, tried and true, right?
So I claimed Texas. My dad was Air Force, so I didn't really have anywhere to claim. Prior to graduating high school, I actually graduated high school in Southern California with Michael Norwood, mutual friend of ours, and then when he moved out to Texas, I decided I'd rather be with him, so I moved there as well. But we'll probably talk about some of this too, but I met my wife and had some kids there, and so my in-laws still live there.
Yeah.
I really have no other place to call home, so that's just what I call myself. I'm a Texan.
Well, I mean, that's wonderful to hear because I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah.
But this is your beautiful wife, Holly. You guys, gorgeous. Y'all never age. Always beautiful. And the thing about Holly that people might not know, she is a killer bass player. I'm just going to put that out there. This is your awesome family, boys and girl. You guys love baseball, right?
We do
That's
love
a big
baseball
deal.
very, very
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Now your son he's playing somewhere, right? Or no? Your oldest.
Say that one more time. Sorry, it froze up a little bit.
Oh yeah. So your oldest son, he's playing at a college somewhere, right? He's playing ball somewhere.
So that's my second oldest. Actually, my oldest, 21. He works right now. He never went to school, but he actually just moved back in, which they always say they do, right? He's 21, moved back in. But that we actually invited him. We invited him back in. We said, "Hey man, why don't you go back to school and figure out your life?" And so he's back in. He's going to go to school. But then my second oldest, he's a senior in high school, but he has committed to play at a Division II baseball school. So he'll be playing there next year. Super excited about that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to watch because we get to follow you guys online and just seeing the what they go through on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you have a son that's a catcher, right? Is one's a catcher,
Yeah.
and what else?
He's a catcher,
Yeah, I love that, man. So I met you on an evening. It was a dark evening at Bush High School many moons ago. I mean, we're talking at least 20 years ago, maybe close to that. And it was really funny because you came to watch me play with this band I was playing with, and it was with you and the notorious Michael Norwood. And you guys y'all were doing this music thing, and I met you, and I was just so enamored with both of you guys. Y'all just had it, right? You were songwriters, which I've always wanted to be, but you had just a beautiful way of writing music, doing life with people. But that one night, I remember meeting you in particular, and Norwood, and y'all both were talking, and then I think Michael walks away, and you're like, "Hey man, if you want to play bass, man, like you could play with us. There's this thing coming up at this thing in Sugar Land and Stafford." I remember, I pass it all the time. It was the Stafford, like whatever hall or something, and there was some youth thing or something, and it was like the first time I mean, you really broke me in. It's really because of you and Norwood that I am. I do anything. I exist, right? You've created a monster.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean your memory is amazing. That's awesome. I do remember to go and watch you play, and I think it was because we wanted to know if you were any good, really.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
apparently you were fine because no, we loved having you and like having you jump on the team. And I remember when, Michael and I, we were by ourselves for so long.
Yeah.
It was just the two of us, and we would hire some people here and there. But you know, uh, you and you know BG and
Oh
like
man.
just when you guys started to come around, it was like, no, we got to be a team. Like we got to make this happen. So it was awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. I've learned so much about life just in those few short years we got to play together and create together. Um,
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. We did a lot of. You think back, I mean, we did a lot in those short few years.
yeah, we really
We
did.
never had like this massive success of like this global, but we did good enough to feel really good
Yeah.
about it. We could sleep at night, right?
Well, I tell people all the time, like, they don't know my name. They don't know our kind of dumb band name that we had. They don't know any
Yeah.
of that, but I get to tell them all the time, like, hey, I got to tour around, play music. I got to create albums with my friends. And for a short period, I got to kind of do it for a living. Like, who gets to say that? So, like, man, it's a good run and it's fun stories to tell my kids and listen back to old recordings and stuff. So,
Yeah, we were, man, this has been, so I've been, man, this is crazy. It blows my mind. I've been married for about 15 years now. In my first
wow.
year of marriage, we traveled and did a couple spot dates through the country, and we came through Nebraska, and we drove from Chicago all the way to Nebraska for our Sunday morning service. And I remember we were just, I mean, just, we listened to Led Zeppelin the entire way there. It was some, like, it was just, I don't know how you guys live up there in Nebraska. I mean, it was like a blizzard that came through that night, and we
Oh,
just
yeah.
pushed through and we made it through.
Yeah.
Um, and then we woke up and I remember Nolan being a zombie, but it
Yeah.
was it was awesome. Now you're in Elkhorn, Nebraska.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that sounds like fun. You'll have a lodge there. Are you a lodge member?
Yes. It's actually just I mean, Omaha is a fairly decent sized city. People don't consider it that because they just fly right over top of it usually. But, Elkhorn is just a suburb of Omaha. So, I mean, we're right on the edge, and Omaha has actually overtaken Elkhorn. So now Elkhorn is nothing more than just I don't know. I don't even know what you call it. Not, it's more than a neighborhood.
Mhm.
But we're Omaha for sure. So Omaha is about 1 million people total.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not too bad. I mean, it's no Houston, but it's
Right.
not too small.
Well, at
Yeah,
least you get some snow. That's fun. We are literally like today is so hot. So we met. We did the whole music thing, and you and Holly were down. And I remember I was working at H&H at the time, and you came in and was like, "Hey man, we have this like internship at this church," and so I ended up coming on. And I remember the first day I walked in, I literally walked in. You said, "Hey, come on, we have a meeting," and I walked in, and we sat down in Richard's office. It was you and Richard and me, and he goes, "You said, hey, we were just kind of getting a feel for each other." And then you said, "Hey, I'm going to take you to the mall. We're going to get you some new jeans." So I literally, Matt, I came in khaki pants and a tucked in shirt, like looked like I was going to Easter service. It was really, really bad. And I tell
yeah,
my wife even now today, I was like, "Listen, the only reason why I wear dark jeans is because of Matt Paddack." And he's like, "Right, yeah." You literally
yeah.
took me to First Colony Mall, and you're like, "Okay, listen, you got to get some new clothes." I've never had anyone ever do that to me ever in my life. I was like, "Oh
It's,
man,
it's because I loved you early on. I just knew it. I mean, and I was for you. I wanted you to be successful, and so yeah,
well, yeah." And I think I don't even know. We probably went to American Eagle was real hot then, and we went and we just
probably yeah,
got a
yeah.
bunch of pants, and I remember spending a bunch of money, and I'm like, "Man, this is," and I just started wearing it, and I mean it. I mean, hey, I think that's why my wife was attracted to me. It was because of my jeans. That's all I got to say. And you had
I
a
was gonna
handle.
say. I mean, that's, that's why you have a wife, right? I mean,
That's exactly why. So I remember that, like walking in, hey, we got the first thing order of business. You've got to change your clothes, Blake. And
so
so I mean, so thank you for that. I appreciate it.
you
Um,
most welcome.
so you are a teaching pastor now at Relevant
Yeah,
Church in Elkhorn,
yeah,
Nebraska, and you
yeah,
guys have a few years ago, y'all went through a big building process. You have this awesome facility, the Relevant
yeah,
Center, for your community, which is so neat. I was able to watch all that kind of happen as you were posting. You guys are keeping everybody up to date, which is
yeah.
really neat. How's that been for the community there in Elkhorn so far?
And it's been awesome. I mean, one of our main visions as a church was when, especially when we went into buy or building something, spending that kind of money. We laid out a vision at the very beginning that we weren't going to build a church. That we were going to build a building that our church met at. I mean, plenty of churches say that. We didn't come up with that phrasing, but plenty of churches say it, but not a lot of churches put the effort in to actually make it happen because it's not easy.
Right.
It actually takes significant work on our part as paid staff to, a lot of times we can't set up on everything we want to on a Friday or Saturday because there's an event coming and they're going to use the space, and so we got to wait till
Mm.
Sunday morning. And so that being said, like it's been pretty awesome. In fact, we just had our vision night, and that vision night we always celebrate stuff from the past year. And I mean, there was some number of like 16,000 people who aren't a part of our church came through our doors at some point
Wow.
over the past year for different large events and different things. And so we always say like, hey, we want to be a place where when Joe Schmo goes through a pivotal circumstance in his life that he's like, man, I don't know about the church, but I was in that building that one time, and Relevant meets over there, and so maybe I'll just go over there. That's kind of one of
Mm.
our main ideas is like, if they're not going to cross the threshold of a church building, they might be in there for a wedding or for a seminar or for something else going on throughout the year. And then when those days come, which we all know those
Yeah.
pivotal circumstances come in people's life and they're looking for something, and so we just want to be a place where they feel like, hey, I've got at least some connection to this church. So it's actually been really cool for our community. um, on the church side, for our church body, it's been amazing. Like we got into the building just about, I think it was less than a year before COVID hit.
Right.
Um, and so we saw some pretty significant growth coming into that. And then COVID hit. Thankfully, God's sovereignty and like, understanding what we would need for our church, like we had the we had the perfect setup when it comes to broadcast cameras, and we jumped straight into. We hadn't even been broadcasting live up to that point, and jumped
Uh,
right into it. And actually, not every church has this story, but we had growth, you know,
yeah,
up
and
and to
you
the
did a
right.
lot of
Yeah.
that, right? You did a lot of that production stuff, getting rolling. I don't know how much you do now, but I mean, you were in the thick of
Oh
it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I still oversee that team, and I have a guy that works for me that runs production. But yeah, I mean, I knew a lot about videography and photography and stuff before that, but the broadcast world is so different. And so coming into
Yeah.
this building, it was like, I mean, I had enough knowledge to kind of talk like I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't really. And so we just kind of fumbled our way through it and found some great resources that helped us out. A guy out of Florida came and helped us a ton. So we were ready to roll when COVID hit. But yeah, it's been, all in all, we grew through COVID, which is insane.
Right.
Financially, we stayed solid through COVID, and then since that point, we've just continued to see fairly significant growth. We're already now, it's been a couple years, I guess, but we're way past pre-COVID numbers, and
Mm.
so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, what you guys created there, just the facility. I mean, it's pretty amazing I mean, just the back wall of your stage is so cool. I always love
Yeah,
looking at the pictures. It's like, oh man, that looks so cool.
yeah,
There's like this, like it looks great. Like it's just a really great,
yeah,
well
yeah. I love
looking.
that.
I mean, so cool.
Yeah,
And I mean, so you guys have done really well. It looks like you guys are high community, which I think that you've always been like that's been a big importance for you in
yeah,
ministry. Would you agree with that?
yeah. 100%. I mean, one of the phrases we use now, and obviously I wouldn't have used it back when I was younger or pre-relevant, is we use a phrase that transformation doesn't happen in isolation, right? Like you, I had a guy just text me yesterday that's going through some alcoholism issues, some marriage issues. Like, hey man, what do I need to do to get closer to God? My first answer
Mm,
is I like get into a group of guys that trying to get closer to God. Like,
yeah,
and so like that's just always been the obvious next step for me is for, man, you want to grow in your relationship with Jesus, you need to be around people who are growing in their relationship with Jesus. You want to learn more about cigars, you should hang out with guys who smoke cigars. I mean, like
sure.
it's just the obvious answer to so many different things. But
Yeah, and so when you're there at Relevant, I know you do a lot of different things. But do you have a bunch of different teams that you oversee, or you just have a few?
yeah,
What's kind of more of your role there?
yeah. So I'm a director over Sunday mornings. So everything that takes place on a Sunday mornings, that's my role. So I oversee, for many years, I oversaw 3 staff members. I'm down to 2. I've lost one recently, but so I oversee, her name's Misty. She runs we call it service programming. So everything that takes place from a stage perspective, she oversees that, which mostly includes the worship team. She leads the worship team. And then Patrick, he runs production. That's broadcast, that's live sound, that's broadcast sound, that's, everything under the sun, with production, lights, all that stuff. And then I used to have somebody that oversaw guest services, just people at the doors and coffee and all those things you can think of. So I've recently taken that over. I'm kind of running that, but I'm doing it now through some high capacity volunteer leaders that are kind of running that for me. We had some budget issues we've been doing great budget wise, but I'm kind of jumping ship from that conversation. We've maintained that we only spend 50% of our budget on paid staff, which if anybody's running an organization would know that that's not a ton. And we've kind of bumped up over a little bit. And when my guest services person decided they had to go find another job, my boss decided for me that we were not going to be replacing that position.
Yeah.
So
That's
it was a way to
important.
save some money budget wise, but it's been fine. It just makes me a little bit more busy. And on the Sundays that I'm preaching, like I'm about to jump into a 5-week series that I'm preaching all of it. And so that just makes me have to focus a little bit more on equipping volunteers to be really ready to go on Sunday mornings. So
Yeah. And being, I mean, you've been in ministry
yeah,
world for 25 plus years. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of things that you've been with pastors that just hasn't worked out. You as a leader now, you're in a role now when you're leading a bunch of people, awesome church. What are some things that you do that you really didn't see pastors do when you were in that kind of support role? Is there anything that you do differently that you saw that maybe that you tweaked now that you're in that role?
oh man.
I'm sure
Well,
there's a
coming
lot.
into yeah, there's a lot coming into at relevant. I say this all the time, and I'm not saying this because he's going to listen to it. I don't know if he's going to, but I consider my boss to be one of the best organizational leaders I've ever been around. He's a great
Mhm.
pastor, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
he just knows how to run an organization really well. And so I've learned so much about that. I didn't, I thought a pastor, especially as a worship pastor, which is where I spent most of my career. I'm like, well, I pick the songs, I play the songs, and then I pick next week's songs, right? It's like,
There you go.
that's
That's
about
it.
it. But I've learned so much, like to really lead people well, which is really what we do. I mean,
Right.
we're we're an organization run by volunteers. No matter how many paid staff your church or organization has, like you're functioning because people give their time. And so if we don't learn how to lead them well, we're never going to survive and thrive. And so I've just learned so much about creating systems and structures and organization and documents, like literal Word documents that lay out everything about every process that ever takes place. Like these are things that I'm like, I would have never thought that I'd be writing an environment overview for my teaching calendar meeting. I mean, like,
Wow.
so I mean, we get way down into the weeds as far as organizational structure goes. But man, I'm telling you, like, I think right now I could hand over my folder of how I do my ministry to a guy that is looking to go into ministry, and he would have tools right there to say, it may not be the best way, it's a way, and they could start, running an organization and leading people and hopefully be effective. So I'm grateful for it. I hated it. It's not my strength. Um, as an artist on any level, we kind
Mm.
of know that we fall into that kind of category, or, of maybe being unorganized at
Well,
times and
yeah,
not
artists
doing
are
so well
very
with the
unorganized.
details. Yeah.
That's very true.
So,
I mean, that's a really good point too. I mean, you're creative. You're a creative, right?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and sometimes even for me, I'm like, man, the administrative stuff, I don't mind it, but I'd rather just like sit and create with a lot of people, or just a couple
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
so the way that you're leading is important because I mean, we both have served in small, medium, and large churches, and I would
Yeah.
say there's not a lot of structure through the whole gamut of like
No.
Even from like just decisions being made. It's just there's not
Yeah.
a lot of accountability, but also just structure in those churches. And I think a lot of it weighs on just a pastor when it really doesn't have to. There can be
No.
other avenues, right? That pastors
Yeah.
can rely on, whether it be elders or deacons or whoever. I mean, the pastor
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the rock star,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it's
Well,
been.
absolutely. And I don't know how many people outside the church community will listen to this podcast, but I mean it's not any different anywhere else. Like if you have a CEO, top level leader that feels the pressure of being and doing everything on their own,
Yeah.
well, that company's not going to be successful either. And so it's just the same thing.
Um, and so, as a leader, what do you think is one of the most pressing, uh, you know, issues facing the church today?
Hmm.
I'm sure there's many.
I think I I don't know if it's the most pressing. I know it's something I think about a lot, and it could just be with the nature of our kind of the flavor of our church, if you will. I just think we need I think we need more churches that are hell bent on saving people.
Mm,
That like
mm,
that Jesus came to seek and to save the lost, and as a church that we gather together for all kinds of reasons. Don't get me wrong, like,
sure,
but
sure.
but ultimately, if we're not doing everything that we can to remain outward focused, then we become inward focused because that's our natural bent as human beings. We want to huddle up and we want to be with the people that are just like us, and that feels good to us. And I'm telling you, man, it's a lot of work to make sure that everything you're doing is trying to reach outside of yourself to seek and to save the lost. And I think there are a ton of churches doing it, and I think every evangelical, Bible believing, God fearing, Jesus loving church is trying to do it on some level or another. I'm not yours by any means, but I think there's a lot of churches, a lot of great churches that, man, if they could just kind of shift a little bit to, hey, we're going to change everything from some words that we use. We're going to change some
Sure.
language, and we're going to do everything we can to really try and reach people. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's the biggest issue facing the church. There's all kinds of social issues that I could have thrown out, like,
Sure.
and again, like, you look at the sexuality issues in our culture and those type of things. And to me, it's like those are big issues, but they're not new. If you read
No,
scripture at all, you're like, hey, we didn't come up with this.
no. It's
We're
been
not the
around for
inventors of
ages.
these issues. Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
so, like, they've been around. So hopefully my thought on what is a big issue isn't really, and there's just so many churches out there doing it, and I'm just not seeing them. That's kind of my goal. I hope.
Yeah. That I think that's a good point, man. Because I was kind of just skimming through y'all's site a little bit, and I was like, man, why aren't they relevant? It just kind of sounds like where did they come up with it? And the first couple of lines of this, it said because Jesus was relevant.
Yeah.
And I love that one sentence I read. I believe that's what it said. Because Jesus is relevant. I think that's important for our time because we're just in extreme crazy times as we have been for many
Yeah.
generations and
Yeah,
ages.
man.
Um, so you're leading a bunch of people, and I'm sure you've dealt with this. But how do you handle just the overall exhaustion and burnout with your staff? Like just looking at the people that you love, that you lead, that you're in the
Yeah.
trenches with on a week to week basis, forming, services and outreach and stuff like that. How do you handle that with your people you lead?
Well, funny that you say that. Do you mind if I'm gonna
Yeah.
read something actually? I don't know if this is good podcast or not, but I wrote something recently because we're just going through our annual evaluations.
Mhm.
Every good organization should be trying to make themselves better, and so evaluating where they're good, where they're struggling, and then all the way down to each. I did it with each of my direct reports. I sit down with them. I was like, here's what you did really, really well. And here's the things that you kind of suck at. Obviously, I try not to say it like that. But, but there was this thing where I kind of got um, really, really hit me pretty heavy towards the end of this process because not only were we doing evaluations, we're also doing our strategic action plans for next year, which are
Mhm.
just our goals and objectives. And so we're doing that. I'm doing that with my boss. I'm doing that with my direct reports. Then my boss is asking me to ask my direct reports questions about me as a leader and where I need to grow and get better. And so I've got it coming at me from all angles. And one day I sat down with them, and it was the simplest questions of like, what do you trust about me? Um, where don't you trust me?
Yeah.
How do you like that I lead you, and where could I lead you better? And so just simple questions. They're not difficult, but by the end of it, I'm like, man, I just had 4 different meetings where 4 different people told me, I don't even know, 8 different things that I need to work on and get better. Yet I'm already, like you just said, I'm already at capacity
Sure.
myself
Sure.
within my own job and leading them. And so I just wrote this. I said a paradoxical issue within leadership and leadership development is the fact that there's a razor thin line between keep pushing to get better and you're never good enough.
Mm.
And that line is not walked very well. I think one of the reasons this is such an issue is there's an underlying assumption that you are whatever you're currently good at, whatever you're good at, whatever I'm good at,
Mhm.
doesn't take any real energy. So let's just keep piling stuff on so that you can continue to get better. When in reality, to remain good at anything requires a significant amount of effort. So what we're really saying is continue to put in the same amount of effort to be good at what you're good at, and now keep adding in more effort to get good at what you're not good at. And this is undoubtedly the driving force behind burnout. And so I wrote that down last week, and then sat down with my direct reports after that. And I said, "Here, guys, this is back to your question. What do I do?"
Yeah.
I sat down with them and I said, I, "I'm only going to ask you to give me one goal. I just want one goal this year, because you know we're going to sit down together, and you have your job, and your job is already a full-time job. And so if I'm going to give you a goal, that means I'm asking you to do something above what you're already doing. And so I'm not going to pile on the 3 or 4 goals that we would normally do over the course of years. You're going to get one, and I'm going to work on it with you. And if we achieve that one by May, we're going to talk about another one,
Mm.
and then we'll work on that one. And maybe by the end of the year, if we get 3, it'll be a fantastic year. But if we get 2, that's fine too.
Right.
So that's just a real practical thing that I've done recently with my own team to say, man, I'm not going to be the one to perpetuate this cycle of everybody feeling burnt out and overwhelmed and
Mm.
unhappy in their roles and in their jobs, and then pissed at me as their boss. And like
Mm.
if I have control over anything, that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to do my best to take the load off a little bit. So that's something I've done recently with them.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I mean it's in the church, especially in the church world. I mean it's a pile. Stuff gets thrown on. I
Oh yeah,
mean I mean before you know it. I mean, and then you have a I mean you have a big family, man. I mean you got your wife, you got your
yeah,
kiddos. I mean,
yeah,
maybe that's someone's listening today and they're like, oh man, they can really connect with what you because what you just said, you just probably might need to write a book about that. But it was really just brilliant. And that's another thing that maybe people don't know about. You say some really cool stuff, but it's really good stuff. Like it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to say it to say it, but I mean, it's really intentful things. And that what you just said was very, very special. But someone might be listening today and like, man, I'm in that rut, man. That I have a full family thing. I have church. I have work. I have
yeah.
other side hustles. I mean, how do you end up? I guess this is my follow up question to that is how do you lead yourself well? Because you're a leader leading so many.
Yeah.
How do you lead yourself well? How do you balance it, man?
Yeah, I'm going to say something that I thought I would never say is kind of one of the main things that's really kind of transformed kind of my work life balance. And that is I've started to get up earlier. I thought I'd never be the guy to say that, like never. But that's one little piece that I've done recently where I'm up at 5. I'm at the gym by 6. I'm dealing with my kids at 7, and then I try to be at the office by 8:30. And so that's one thing. That's just a rhythm thing that I've actually seen make a difference for me. And then a determination I made last year. Last year, I went through one of the more difficult mental health seasons of my life. I didn't know if I wanted to do it anymore. Like the number of times I came home from work and told my wife, I'm going to go be a carpenter because
Yeah.
I like being a carpenter and I'm pretty good at it and I could probably make some money and then I don't have to think about this anymore. um, but really what it came down to was I determined that I'm going to give everything I have to what God's called me to do in my role at Relevant in my job.
Mm-hmm.
And if in any way that's not good enough, then I'll be asked to step down from my job, and that's fine.
Yeah.
What's not fine is for me to go above and beyond what I can do, to go above capacity to try and achieve acceptance for a job that is going to eventually take me out. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? It's like
Oh
there's
yeah.
no point in going above and beyond my capacity for something that will take me out when I love it, and I believe God wants me to do it. I really do, and he may not want me to do it forever, but he wants me to right now, and so I'm going to give it everything I have, but I'm not going to go above anything. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's not even to say like that. I don't want to make that sound like I'm like weak either. I'm push
Mm-hmm.
hard, right? I'm gonna push hard,
Yeah.
but I'm not going above capacity to try and achieve something that is unachievable, in hopes that somebody else might look at me and say, "Oh, he's doing a good job." If
Yeah.
I know I'm doing a good job, if I know I'm doing the best that I can at my capacity, and I'm giving it my full effort in God's eyes and in my own, in my wife's eyes, like all those things, it's like, hey, if one day my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, dude, you're just not cutting it,"
Yeah.
I'll say, "Sweet, I'm gonna go find a job." And really, it sounds funny, but it's like, I think if we could all, anybody that's in a situation where they feel stressed like that, it's like, man, if you could ever come to that point where you're like, I'm not, I don't want to quit. I don't
Yeah.
want to lose this job, but I'm not going to lose my life over this job. And
Right.
so if one day I walk in and they don't need me anymore, then man, God's got something else for me. I'll go find something else. I'll deliver pizzas until I can find another job, whatever it may be. So,
Yeah, those are some again, once again, those are some incredible nuggets that you just said. I'm gonna have to rewind and just like pull those out.
yeah.
But man, so kind of switching to music because that what really brought us together.
Yeah.
Is there any music that you're just like, man, this is this is great right now? I mean, there's a lot of junk out there, but that's just my personal opinion. But is there anything that you're like, oh man, I guess I'm really loving this?
Oh man.
I don't even know, man. To be
Um,
honest with you, Matt, I don't even know who's like. I don't even care. I don't. Just to
yeah,
answer my own
exactly.
question.
So I find the most joy, and I wish I had a deeper, like real artsy kind of answer, but I find the most joy right now in listening to same old singer songwriters I've always loved. So like
Yep.
you, I can put on Ben Rector
Hmm.
for days, and just every song it just makes me smile and I'm happy and I'm singing. I just love it. Um, or what ends up happening is I'll put on Ben Rector radio, and then the guys that come on along with Ben Rector and Dave Barnes and all those guys, I'm like, yeah, it still makes me happy. So it's still what I listen to.
You know, I have a funny Dave Barnes story. So I was playing. I don't know. I was playing at this church in Woodlands, whatever. We're doing this worship thing, this is like the worst idea ever. It's a massive packed, all these kids, and it's me and a small band. We're gonna lead worship. It's like one of my first really big things, and Dave Barnes is opening up the whole night. Like we're not even playing till
What?
after Dave Barnes. So Dave Barnes, we go into the green room, whatever the back room, and we're sitting there like, oh man, there's like some candy and stuff. So I go to grab some, and they're like, hey, you can't grab his stuff. And I'm like, it's just like candy. I'm hungry. Well, we'll get pizza for you later. And I'm like, okay, great. So then like they go up there and they do their whole thing. And I think even like David Ramirez showed up. Like he just randomly appeared, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
Dave, what are you doing here? And so they do this thing, and then like, all right, and everyone's like, yeah, Dave Barnes. And then we go up there, and they're like, okay, go do some worship. And I went, oh man, are you kidding me? Like he just sang
That's all.
Greyhound. Like how do I connect this? It was the word. I think I did like 3 or 4 songs, and I'm like, I'm out. I'm done.
That's what, man, you threw out a name there that isn't like, watching what David Ramirez has become as an artist is, that blows my mind.
Hey,
I mean, you remember the
you
guy?
guys
You
called
remember
it though.
he played that little mini Taylor, just singing. I mean, it was good. It was always
Yeah.
good.
Oh yeah.
Man, it's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, I remember you guys, y'all. He play. What was Jesse and all these guys? They were playing with us. That was something they did a couple things with
Yeah.
us, and when they were like the David Ramirez band, and
Yeah.
And then you're like, man, you're gonna be big, but we always say that because everyone's.
Yeah.
But he actually was the one that took it, and now he's
Yeah.
doing his own thing. He's kind of, I
Yeah.
think he's kind of carved out, his own little niche. I personally love his. I love his verb. Not a lot of people who sing with vibrato these days.
No,
David
no.
has vibrato.
Yeah. I couldn't do it if I tried. I'd just make a fool of myself.
Right, and I will say that's one thing redeeming factor about him that I actually appreciate is his
Yeah.
vibrato. I think again he's niched out a thing. I saw
Yeah.
him; he did like some kind of interview with Santa Maria Kraken, and I was like, man, this is awesome. So
Yeah.
he's done really well, man. A lot of the guys that we kind of grew up with playing are doing some really great stuff, and you had a hand in that. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have you played with and that are doing some really great stuff. And I think a big part of why I wanted to do a podcast like this was one is because I feel like death is just it's one thing that we all have in common. Like it's just gonna happen. And I can't stand funerals. I'm not a big funeral
No.
person. I love to tell someone to their face what they mean to me in the moment because it's all about our moments that we have together. And so, man, part of this is just hearing your story, but also letting you know that there's many people that you've encouraged throughout your lifetime, not just in ministry, just being a brother, being a friend. And Michael Cash was telling me just a little while ago, he's like, man, the first time I played with you guys, like I was real nervous and like I would think I was wearing my Jewelry Inn uniform. I came up and I was playing at Sugar Creek with you guys. He's like, man, that was so much fun. We had it was a fun little brotherhood. And man,
Yeah.
you and Mike, but just for you, man, I think that you're visionary is one thing I look at and I'm so amazed by. You've had a long road, man, and
Yeah.
you're reaping a lot of really beautiful things right now, just in your family, your kids getting older, a rich relationship with Holly. I mean, you guys are rocking it. Not without the struggles, but you guys are pushing through. And I think that's one thing I can say that I've learned a lot from you is just the push through, man. The push through, seeing that end vision, that goal that you want to get to, making it a priority, and not stepping over people, loving people where they're at, high community. Something I still need to learn more about, but man, you've made an incredible stamp on my life and my family's life. I was telling Cash, I was like, man, I don't think I would be the person I am today without Matt Paddack and Michael Norwood. Like it just like you guys at some point, and that we all have those people, man. I'm sure
Yeah.
you have those people in your life that at a season that you really didn't even know you needed it, they stepped in, and it was a stamp. And so, man, I appreciate what you've done just in my life, on a friendship level, but just as a leader too. I mean, man, I've had the joy just to follow you, and it's incredible how you've allowed the Lord to just really work in your life in the darkest of times and in the best of times.
Yeah.
And man, you're so creative, dude. Like I love like this photography thing, like beautiful. Like you can do it. Do you still have your Taylor? You still playing your Taylor?
Same Taylor. Still, I got a nice little pick hole in it on the face. Love it. It's my favorite.
Yes.
I got the
Yes.
tattoo of it on my arm.
Oh man, you're
There
so
we go. Yeah.
brave. You're so brave. I asked Crystal like when we got married, I was like, "Hey, can I get a tattoo on my finger, just no ring?" And she was like, "No." I was like, "Oh man, but Matt's doing it. Why can't I do it?" Well, man, hey, as we round out our time together, I appreciate you, but I want to ask you just a quick question that maybe you can encourage others with, man. The ones that are in those supporting roles, that are in behind the scenes, trudging it out day to day. They're working hard, seeing some good stuff, but man, they're tired. How would you encourage them if they were just right here in front of you? What would you say to them?
Man, I'd kind of go back to what I was just talking about a minute ago of God's God's put you somewhere. Like I'm not even huge anymore. I've kind of gone through a progression in this in my own life, whether or not God called me as a
Sure.
pastor, like just heavy-handed, anointing of oil on me, calling. But um, I know this is where He has me, and I know that He has me pastoring people. And I would believe the same for all them as well. Whatever he's called them to, whatever he's led them to, wherever they currently are, he's got you there. And if that's in some sort of supporting role, then that's for a very, very good reason. I mean, I'm super, super close to my boss. He's one of my closest friends. And so supporting him, walking alongside of him, I get to know that like the impact I'm having on him as my boss, I'm having an impact on my friend. Like the weight I take off of him, I take off of my friend. And so when I took over teaching pastor, I took over 40% of the weeks, and I took that from him because it weighed heavy on him. And so like, man, being in a supporting role is not the easiest thing. But man, you can have some pretty significant impact. And in fact, Ronnie, my boss, tells me all the time, like, there's no other more influential voice at Relevant besides him than me. And that means a lot. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be anything. Like, I don't need to have I need to have the office. I don't need to have the first name on the list. Like that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is influence. And can I help people come to know Jesus better? And can I help them learn to walk alongside him better? And man, this is where I'm at, and this is the role that God's given me. And so I'm grateful to be able to do it.
Well, man, we're proud of you, dude. If you're listening to this today and you want to connect with Matt and his church, if you're in the Nebraska area or happen to listen to this, relevantcommunity.org is the site. Matt Paddack, our guest today on Unsung. Man, thank you so much for being here today. And man, I hope to chat with you soon, very soon. Yeah. Maybe we can tag team it and bring Norwood on. Maybe get BG too. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah,
hey, quickly before you head out, make sure that you follow us on these platforms and you subscribe, you follow. We'd love to have you along for the journey. Again, thanks, Matt. We'll see you next time on Unsung.
To this place that's around him, he's lightning.
We want to thank beautiful contributors for allowing us to use their music for the Unsung podcast. You can support them by going to any platform, anywhere you listen to music, and purchasing and listen to their music. They also might have some vinyl or CDs still available. You can reach out to them, but support beautiful contributors.